I'm going to give it about 30 more seconds to let some people come on in, and then we are going to get started. So glad you're here. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started today. So actually, before we do that, Nicole, are we recording? We are recording. Okay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Sarah McAllister, and I am so excited to have you here today for our professional development series with Maudra Brown, who is a public health grad from 11. I know that you are going to enjoy this conversation as much as I am. For right now, I'm going to do a couple housekeeping items, and then we're going to jump right into the conversation with Maudra. So first off, Nicole Bush, who is our director for Alumni Career and Professional Development, she is our tech support for today. So thank you. So if you have any issues, feel free to just direct message Nicole, and she'll take care of you. This session is being recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel this afternoon. And Nicole will drop that link in the chat so you can access that at any time. All of our professional development series sessions are recorded. And so you can definitely check that out and see what we've done in the past. All right, I believe that is it. So let me stop sharing here. And all right, so Maudra and I have had some just wonderful conversations in preparation for this session today. And to kick us off, I would love for you to just do a quick introduction, however you want to talk about yourself, and then we'll jump into some questions.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sarah and Nicole, for the invitation. I am unbelievably excited. I am probably if there's a super fan for Tulane, it's me. I am so thankful and appreciative for this opportunity. My name is Maudra Brown. I am the Chief Health Strategist for MRB Public Health Consulting. I am so excited to share more about my work, how I got here, what that means for public health, and how exciting it is to be an entrepreneur and a public health consultant. And I will say my background is colorful, as most public health professionals are, formally educated, I say, in the two best cities in America, Charleston, South Carolina for my undergrad, and New Orleans for my master's in public health and tropical medicine. So I focus a lot of my career in quality improvement in health systems, but I am classically trained in partner relations and program development. So that's a little bit about me. Again, very excited to tell you guys more about MRB Public Health and what it's like to be an entrepreneur.
Wonderful. Oh, I'm so excited to just jump into that colorful history, as you said. So why don't we start there, right? So walk us through, how you where you started, and I think specifically, how did you make your decisions? How did you make your different professional decisions? What kind of the different pivots did you make, and what was on your mind in those moments?
I would say sometimes you need a push, right? And sometimes those pushes push you all the way off a cliff. And for me, the pandemic was a super hard push or a shove, whichever way you want to say it. I had to ask myself, as a public health person, as a professional, as an expert in my field, was I going to sit on the sidelines, be sad? I'm a mother. Schools were shutting down, things were happening. Was I going to sit on the side, or was I going to push forward into something new? I think everyone in public health in my field consults here and there. They do those things organically because there are so many subject matter experts. But for me, I needed a little push out of my comfort zone out of what I knew to be true. I have a long and spicy history of working with government agencies and working for government agencies, both federal and state. And so that in itself is a career. And so what was I going to do with everything that I knew? And how was I going to be impactful? And did I want to look back on this time and say, oh, I just help family and friends, here and there, or was I going to push forward or be pushed forward into action? And so that's kind of how consulting came to be, and how MRB was birthed.
Beautiful. Can you talk a little bit more about MRB and all the different work all the different things that you do with that?
Absolutely. So we are a consulting firm that specializes in connection and relationship management and strategic alignment and the integration of public health in your everyday work. So we keep businesses, schools, organizations open for business. I pause a little bit because sometimes when I say it, I think, oh my goodness, the schools that we work with, the businesses that we've partnered with have stayed open for 5 days, for 5-day instruction for in-person learning, which is a huge, huge thing, because the schools that we work with are mostly in the South, where there are not any mandates for anything. Things are kind of wild, wild west everywhere you go. And so it was really hard. Community spread is always high. And partnering with us allowed them to focus their attention on what they do best, right? Schools know how to educate. Businesses know how to run. Their job and expertise is not in public health. And for me, taking that burden away was both exciting to do and to implement the things that we know work. And that success has translated over to what we call early adopters, folks that are like, tell me the things before I need them. And then those people that are like, oh my God, everything's on fire, help us now. So it's a duality of clientele, but it makes it spicy and exciting for us.
Absolutely. So you talked about, right, kind of the theme of this conversation is around consulting. And as I know that you are too familiar with the question of like, what is consulting?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what does that even mean? So how do you answer that when people ask?
I answer it, I think, in the most Southern way you could think. It is the story of the man and the fish, right? Teaching a man to fish or fishing for the man, right? So 2 types of consulting: training people on the thing to do, or doing the thing for them that they are either unable, don't have the capacity to do, and don't have the expertise to complete. So those are kind of the 2 avenues. And we are so flexible and we pivot to the needs of our clients, that we've done both. We've taught to fish and we've fished for them. But I thought that was a great, everybody knows that story.
That's genius. I'm going to borrow that if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely.
That's great. So when you think about your day-to-day work, mm-hmm. what are the things that are exciting? What are the things that excite you the most?
I would say I work a lot with kids and with educators. And the most exciting, as a mother of 3 kids myself, and all are school age, 1 preteen, Lord, okay? And the other 2 are smaller. I would say helping and empowering folks. Everyone wants to do the right thing. People want to get, and there's so much division, right? Everywhere you look. But we can agree that we want healthy, safe kids. We want a healthy work environment. We want to be safe for ourselves and for our families. And I think the exciting thing about my work is bridging those divisions practically and strategically, right? We can agree we can't take 2 weeks off every 5 minutes for quarantine. So what are we going to do about that? How can we make that situation better for parents, for families, and for communities? So helping and empowering folks to make the change that they know is going to be most impactful for their lives.
I love that so much. What about, when you think about, this is something that you and I and Nicole were talking about beforehand of, maybe the things that aren't so exciting, right? So when we think about the opposite of that question, what are the things that maybe you wish that you knew going in, or, if you had a magic wand, what are those challenges for you?
I would say, I know we have talked about it for sure, but the operations of a business and the different avenues that you can choose. I think in public health, we're often trained as servant leaders. That is our heart. That is how we perform best. Those are things that we know to be true. But really, the education of business, of operating a business, what that entails, learning some hard lessons, maybe you didn't have to, but now you do. And as I always say, each one teach one. So if there is a resource out there, connecting people to those resources as small business owners, for sure. Things I wish I knew.
Absolutely. Have you seen, what does that look like for you now in terms of is that a big part of your business? Is that connection piece? Or I guess more thinking about what, if a brand new entrepreneur came to you, how would you coach them?
I would say the information is out there. Sometimes you have to learn it in a compressed timeline. So if you have an inkling of entrepreneurness, I would say start now. Start researching, start learning about independent business, start learning about what it means to run a business operationally, logistically, how to grow your business effectively. Because what you don't want to do is trade one stressor for another, right? A lot of people jump into entrepreneurship thinking, I work for myself. It's gonna be free and clear. No, it is not. You have to be so hard on yourself in the beginning so that things are easy for you in the end.
I love that. Let's keep on this kind of thought process around kind of the early stages. There's a great question in the chat from someone who is wanting to start a consultancy business. And how do you do that when you're leaving an organization, right? So you've got that kind of typical 9 to 5, wanting to go into consulting. And then specifically, what are those first steps?
There are a lot of businesses that have wrapped their arm around the infancy of business, right? The beginning portions. And I would say most of us, that have, terminal degrees, that have, professional accolades, how to research. And I would say, do your research first before you reach out for help. Registering your business, things that are, that are super time intensive, but not complex once you know what to do. And so taking that, it's almost like a pre-plan before the plan. It's a little bit of, legwork. Well, what do I need to do? And what things do I need to check? Do I need to have a register? What about my address? How do I do those things? Researching for your state is so important. Every state is different. And some are great and some are not. But there are avenues and there are people that their whole job is to help small business in your state. Find those people and bring them some coffee and talk to them about what it is you need to do. And they will help you. They will hold your hand. They will tell you, no, not this thing, do this thing, and help you with that checklist before you start doing. If that makes sense, Sarah.
Yes. That makes so much sense. I love that idea too of, I think often we think about entrepreneurship as you have to do it on your own, right? Like that's kind of like, you're by yourself, you're an entrepreneur, but I love that idea of that, like, there's people that want to help you. You just have to find them.
Right. And make them your friends.
Yep, absolutely.
Small business administration, they're your friends. Their whole job is to find you. So make their job easy.
Oh, I love that. Yes. Let's go back to a little bit more in terms of talking about specifically around public health, right? And so when we first talked, the thing that stuck out to me the most is just how excited and how passionate you are about public health.
We love it.
And that's one of the things that I love so much about public health professionals. When you're thinking about when you were getting that public health degree, when you were thinking about, what is your professional life going to look like? How does that compare, right? Kind of like the early part of you to now. What's different? What do you wish you kind of had known?
Oh man, I definitely think more emphasis. Like I said, we're trained to be servant leaders. We're trained to support states, the federal government, in these efforts, because public health is population health, is community health. We're trained to learn how to help folks as a community become healthy. And so with that, there is a little deficit about independent consultants, what that means for our organization, not our organization, but our practice as a whole. Is there space for that? And what does that mean? So I wish I knew earlier in my career to explore those outliers, those people that are different. I am different. Most of my colleagues are, epidemiologists and biostatisticians. They love data. I love it too, but they're not necessarily outward facing, right? They didn't get media trained. These are things that I wish as a young professional, I got a leg up so that I didn't have to learn them late or the hard way too, working with legislators, lobbyists, all of those things you kind of learn mid-career when I maybe would have done a little better had I learned them right out of graduate or at least around that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I'm hearing from you is that awareness of, maybe there was a bit of kind of square peg in a round hole, right? Trying to make yourself into something that you weren't. Talk us through a little bit more of, what did that process look like when you were like, you know what, I do want to do this a little differently. And if you could, if you're comfortable, what were some of those kind of harder lessons that you learned that maybe someone else can avoid?
Bite-sized hash brown, or you just broke it?
Oh,
huh? Oh.
1 second.
Sure.
Okay, I think we're good.
Well, I would say hard lessons. I'll start with that, Sarah. I would say the thing I learned is the more I am myself, the better. I think we are so used to conforming and trying to be a part of something that we don't celebrate our uniqueness. I'm unique that I'm excited to be in front of people. I'm not afraid to talk to anyone at any level, from the president of a company to the worker bee that's at the front gate. Like, that is a unique skill set of relationship management. And it's a soft skill that I think is natural to me, but it's not something that I celebrated as much. And that was a hard lesson for me, trying to, I always say, I went to school and graduate with, granola, bring your dog to work, folks, right? I'm working abroad. I'm having a great time. Those are my people. And then professionally, I end up working with suits and ties and health systems and lobbyists that make you kind of confused about who you want to be and how who you are fits into this world. But sometimes you're not meant to fit in, you're meant to stand out.
I love that. And I always like to think of things as, how can someone take your experience and kind of translate it into maybe a bit of a gauge or, kind of a litmus test. And I was hearing you say, feeling confused might have been one of those flags for yourself of like, wait a minute, this isn't how I want to feel.
Right. And I also think, especially during the pandemic, people in public health, we're all watching it unfold, but we are like the Matrix. We can see the things before the things happen. Mm-hmm. And so we're like, oh my Lord. No, yes, no. We're wanting to do these things, but it does take that push or that leap. For me, it was my kids' school. Mm-hmm. I said, there's no way they're going to be ready. Not one way. And so what can I do? Mm-hmm. And am I brave enough to do it? I like to think I am. I like to think I'm an example for my daughter. I like to think I'm an example for my colleagues, right? What I know isn't that exclusive. How I do it is exclusive, mm-hmm. But what I know, lots of people know. But are you brave enough to do it?
That's a great question. So we've got a few questions in the chat, so we're going to do a bit of a pivot.
Love it.
So this is, we're going to shift a little bit into, kind of what we're talking about, but more of the, starting your business, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you suggest fundraising and or gaining clients? So that first kind of influx of money.
Right. Get really great at pitching and practice on people that you love. Or maybe those that don't know you. So it's great to, practice things that you're not familiar with. And for me, sales pitching, all that was brand spanking new. And so how do you close a deal? Researching what that looks like. Understanding the levers that organizations and businesses use. Is it an RFP process? Is it a bid situation? Is it a pitch by design? Are they looking for consultants for things? Can you get on a listserv so that they tell you more about the needs of their organizations and their businesses? Make a list of the people that you want to hit. I have a hit list of it sounds a little, a little dark, but ideal clients, ideal people you want to be in front of. And why? What is and knowing your value add, right? I'm not for everybody. And I know that. And everybody's not for me. Mm-hmm. And they know that too. Because my expectations are high. I want you to get to zero COVID. I want you to have the best and most healthy environment possible, and that is sustainable. And with that comes work. You got to be ready. And the more honest you are with yourself about your value add, your deliverables, what you want to accomplish in a quarter, in a year, in 2 years, what does that look like for you operationally? Because all fast growth is not good, right? Sometimes it's a slow burn, and sometimes that's good. So we want to make sure as a business, when you're starting out, that you know what you want, even if you don't know how to get there yet. I didn't start off thinking I'm just going to have a ton of people. I started thinking I want to help my baby's school. This is what I want to do. And then it turned into something else because people talk. And that's how things happen. So that's another way. So some people, it's a direct referral, right? And then sometimes you go hunting. You go hunting in RFP land, in bid land, request for information, request for proposals, all of those things. And every organization is different.
Mm-hmm. Great. You mentioned about you're not for everybody and everybody's not for you. So that's a perfect segue into this next question. Have you ever turned down consultancy projects due to a lack of alignment with your personal values? And if so, can you give an example?
Yes, 100% yes. Because I think sometimes you're nervous about, if I turn these people down, are they going to talk to their friends? Are they going to tell, like a million things are going on in your brain. But when I turn down clients or when I don't pursue certain clients, it's because I either have intimate knowledge of their structure, their organization, and their capacity for readiness, or I've already worked with them in some shape, form, or fashion, and I know better. And so I am selective because I want to be successful and I want my clients to be successful. And that is one goal for me and my business. So my goal is above all others, success of my business and success of my clients. I want them to look back and think that was a great investment. She didn't waste her time. We had an effective relationship, a mutual relationship. And that is, sometimes it's a hard thing, right? School districts have a lot of money, but they are not ready. Most of the time, they're not ready. They have a different structure, right? A lot of layers for decision making. You have to think about those things when you're coming in to a dynamic environment. Who are the decision makers and can they make them fast? Mm-hmm. So those are the things I would say about turning down clients or not pursuing clients based on those things. Mm-hmm. You need to have that like lined up next to your hit list. Like these are why. Here's the people that I want, and here's why. Mm-hmm. And not to be because they have a lot of money. Like these are why, because I know they're ready. And these are the reasons and how they're ready.
I'm curious kind of with that, thinking about the clients that aren't ready. When you were early on, I guess my question is, did you have to learn that the hard way, or were you pretty clear going in? Like, did you take on a client and you were like, ugh?
I like to say you should always lean on your intuition. And when I have a feeling, Sarah, I don't do it. I'm running the other way. And that's not, I would say with growth, right? Everybody in your youth, you're like, of course, I'm going to do it all. But the mature Maudra is like, hey, if I got then it's a no. If it's a question, then it's a no. And so I did essentially previously in my work, in my body of work, learn it the hard way. But in my business, I have not. I avoid it at all costs. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Time, energy, resources, all of those things to put into. And when people tell you, what's the phrase? When people show you who they are, you should believe them. Mm-hmm. That's in business too. Mm-hmm.
I appreciate the simplicity of that, of like, if it's a or a question mark, like, I love how clear that is. That's great. So there's another question of kind of coming back to, those soft skills that you mentioned. Do you have advice on how or where to gain business skills, since most of us have science backgrounds? How did that come to you?
I would say closer than you think. So we always think about like mentoring up or looking up for folks, right? Because that's what we're taught. We're like, oh, this person's so far ahead. This person's a consultant here. They do this thing. But really, my best teachers are people to my right and to my left. There are other people doing this work or adjacent, because public health consulting is very niche, right? There are people that only work with nonprofits. There are people that only do monitoring evaluation. There are only people that do X, Y, Z. I would say, look to your left and your right. There are places and people that have those skills and that teach those skills. And so if you feel like, I always say, when I used to do working for the government, I was petrified of, I know this seems like a weird thing, but I'm going to say, I was petrified of standing in front of folks and presenting. I know it doesn't seem right because here we are, but I was so afraid of public speaking. I didn't want to make a mistake. As a science person, you want everything to be in alignment. You don't want any mistakes. You don't want nobody to have no questions, nothing. And what I learned and what I did was I took that deficit and I poured everything I had to correct it. I watched videos, I went to courses, I joined Toastmasters, which is a very good situation, but very uncomfortable because they have you learning, 30-second pitches, go. I needed that ability, that skill very early, much earlier than I was prepared. And so when you talk about, as a science background, having those deficits, you're already there, realizing that you do, and knowing that there are people and places that you can find. LinkedIn is a great resource for those that need those softer skills. I know it's going to say podcasts. There are some great podcasters out there that can really help you see where your deficits are and also give you resources to support them. I know that's a long roundabout.
No, that was great. Super helpful. So this next question is about kind of going back to that first client, right? How long did it take you to get your first consultancy project? And then do you work alone or have you taken on others to work with or for? And then one more. What are the pros and cons for taking on partners and or employees as a consultant?
Okay, so that's a good question. And I got a great answer. So the first client was my first school, my baby's school. And it was a little reluctant client, actually. I was very much like, I'm doing this for my blessings. I don't need any money. Please don't pay me. I love you guys. I want my babies to do well. Let me fix everything for you. And they were like, thank you, but we can't. Thank you so much, but also here's some money. So that they were my first kind of, like I said, like this was an iteration. It was very organic how it happened. And so I think that's the best way to describe it. So my first client is a cluster of schools. It's a charter school, and they, reluctantly on my behalf, paid me. And then that's when I said, I probably should get myself together. I probably should get this a little more legitimate. And so for my first year, to the second part of that question, do you work alone or have you taken on? My first year, I tried to do it all myself like a fool. And I know that's not everybody's thing, but I was doing it all alone, which is a great foundation as the chief health strategist now, to know all the parts and how I prefer them to be and what I need, what my expectations are, right? Because I've done it. So I don't know if I would advise doing that or not, but that's the way that it occurred for me. And then the third question, should you bring on people? I think knowing where your strengths are so important, so that where you're at a deficit, you have professionals to assist you. Can I do data visualization? Absolutely. Can I work an on-site audit? Absolutely. Because those are things I've done. But is that the best use of my time? And are there individuals that need to learn those skill sets? I will say there are some missteps in that process that you kind of have to navigate around. I would say begin with the end in mind. So maybe don't begin with students. I'm not saying anything about students. I love them. But the amount of teaching that you have to do as you go versus having someone that's a mid-professional that you can contract with for a specific thing like data visualization or audit findings, report writing, those types of things are a better use of your time as a whole. And so, but every part of, I always say, you know, nothing is forever. Every part of your business is temporary, right? I was temporarily not wanting any money from my clients. I was temporarily doing it on myself. But there's iterations and levels, and they come and go.
That flexibility piece seems very, very important.
Oh man, it's a learning opportunity, being flexible, especially for, I think, the rigidity of folks that are in the sciences, right? We love a fact, we love a data, we love it to be clear, and it's clear as mud.
Absolutely. So Sarah is asking, she's saying, what you are doing sounds really familiar to the work that she does in her local health jurisdiction. How do you intersect with the LHJ and their work with schools in particular?
So that's a good question. So I always like to think of independent public health consultants as an extension of our state-based partners, right? There's nothing that I'm doing that is proprietary, but we all know on this call and outside of this call that public health is drastically under-resourced, underfunded, under-abridged, all of those things. And so capacity is a thing, right? And I would also say and argue the point that they don't have the time to be a boutique, right? To have the protocols, procedures, things that we know to be true and science-based, and navigate those and tweak them for the client, for their population. There's a little small school that I have, a little baby school. I say baby because they're only kindergartners and first graders, right? So they're a special population, right? Broad guidance is not going to help them. They need something a little more specific. And so the extension of public health and population and community health is particular to those communities. And so that's what I would say, you know, if they have time to visit all of the charter schools, all of the public schools, all of the schools in general, they do not. They don't have the manpower, they don't have the time, they don't have the resources to do those things. So we, you know, and I'm not the only one. There are other public health consultants that are my colleagues that are doing this work. And so thinking of them as an extension and a complement and not a competition.
That's great. That takes it takes a village kind of
listen,
mentality.
Everybody, right? All hands on deck.
Yeah. I want to come back to one of these questions, kind of goes back to the resources that you were talking about previously. And so Christy is asking, do you have specific examples around the podcast and other resources for the skills that you found helpful?
I would say there are a couple of public health specific podcasts. There is a lady, her name is Dr. Huntley. She is phenomenal and does she does like live on LinkedIn, and her content is around kind of this niche and how to navigate public health consult. So she's specific to public health consulting, but I think her content is translatable to anyone that's interested in pursuing independent consultant in entrepreneurship. So she would be my first as a podcast, as a LinkedIn, as a resource. I will also say there's a couple of, it's always good to see other people interviewed for their work. And I think there's a public health millennial podcast who does a similar thing. So I would say those two as a good resource to see what's out there, to kind of, you know, I always say investigate and spy in LinkedIn and get in those DMs for people. And I'm not afraid. I will say this, I am not shy about reaching out to people for a coffee date in the DMs. a virtual coffee date. If you want to know more about their work, ask them.
Mm-hmm.
So those would be the avenues I would pursue as specific to public health.
I love that. Okay. And I just wanted to echo something that someone was saying. So anybody else who has ideas about podcasts, feel free to put them in the chat, because this can be more of kind of a resource sharing piece too. So that's a great way to start that off. So let's pivot more to generally just how you work as a professional, right? Work-life balance is something that we've all talked about for a really long time. And I don't know about you, but I know I've been having a lot of conversations with people these days about and you and I talked about it when we first jumped on, about how tired we all are most of the time, right?
We're tired.
We're tired. How do you define your own work-life balance, and what does that look like for you?
I would say the first year, it was Wild Wild West for me. It was all the time, no time. It was, kids is making packets. It was everything under the sun. And for type A's, for people that are, very, very driven, it is hard to turn off. But you do get to a point, and I know you and I have talked here, that your body will tell you, I've had enough. It's over. See you in a week. And so I would also say, people are so quick to say self-care, right? But self-care is prevention. You shouldn't be doing self-care to manage your stress. Your self-care is to get you to a point so that you're not, right? That's aftercare. That's what it really is. It's aftercare. And so I am not the best at balance. Anybody that tells you they are, I feel like they are not telling the truth. Not in these times. It is not in a pandemic. If you have family, if you have a career, everything has been turned up, down, and all the way around. And to think that you could balance among those things, I think you're not telling yourself the truth. But I would say getting those hard non-negotiables and figuring out what those are. For me, I'm a hard stop. Well, nowadays I'm trying. Hard stop on the day, and I leave it all in the office. No work phone upstairs, nothing after hours until the next day. And I get up early. So there's that. Me and Sarah were talking about auto sending, where I'm an auto sender of emails and of invoices of whatever. I will do it all that day, and then it will auto send when I need it to send. So learning the tools and tricks that can help you when you do have a heavy load, when you do have a lot to do, because work still needs to get done, but you have to have a hard line. And I can't say that I never cross that line, because that would be telling a fib. But I try to be more honest about that for new people that are coming on. So they don't feel like, oh, it's me, I'm out of control, I don't have myself together. Nobody has it together. Mm. I watched a clip of Shonda Rhimes, who is very famous for a lot of things, right? She's so accomplished. And she said to think there is balance is a myth, right? There's give and there's sacrifice, right? If she's this place, then she's not this place. If she's doing things with her kids, she's not doing something for work. And that realization can help you process and make procedures around how best to manage your time as a day-to-day practice.
I think that's so helpful to what I was hearing you say, is really redefining, renaming. Right. Work-life balance doesn't work. That like pressure and those expectations. Mm-hmm. That's so helpful. I want to just share something because I know that you're not looking at the chat, so I don't want you to miss this. So someone said, thank you so much for your honesty. You truly are motivational and empowering. And thank you for bringing this to my week.
Oh, that's so nice. Man, people are nice in the chat. Tell her I like to put that in my pocket when I have to talk to school boards.
I'll share that with you.
Okay. I'd like to
I'll
have that later for when
Absolutely.
I'm like getting it.
Absolutely. Let's talk I know we've got about 15 minutes left. So I do want to come back to something that you mentioned earlier around mentoring, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you talked a little bit about kind of the, leaning on people to either side of you around those business skills, but talk a little bit more about the role that mentoring has played in your life and what advice would you give to recent grads or anyone looking for mentors?
I would say, look at the person and not the job. Because I have worked in HIV, I have worked in maternal and child health, I've worked in viral suppression, I've worked in quality health systems. My career has taken me a lot of places, right? But who I am as a professional is so different than who I was when I first left Tulane. And looking at the person, if they're authentically there, right? That I think has been beneficial for me in looking for collegial connections, right? People that are of like mind, of like spirit, of like interest. And as I said before, I think people often want to do that up. Like I have almost, I think 16 or 17 years of experience, but you want to think 20, 25, those people above you, but really it's the people that are next to you that have that same, that are going through the same things. And maybe they have overcome something that you could then take. So I think mentorship is always talked about as someone senior, but the best connections I've had, and I know y'all are like, I know this is a Tulane thing. I love Tulane because of the connections that I had there. These are women and men that I have still a connection with. And they're all over the country, all over the world, because it's international health. So those relationships I find are the best connections. The people that I finished with, the people that are doing similar work, that is a good mentorship opportunity. And taking them to coffee, virtually, but however you can do it, learning more about them and their path is the best, I think, mentorship that I've gathered and that has helped me grow.
Mm-hmm. No, that's really helpful. All right, let's see. Can you talk about some of the sacrifices that you have taken on or endured as a consultant that you did not have in a regular 9-to-5 job while working for someone else?
I think I learned to, especially, as a mom of 3, I learned, probably not on the first kid, but definitely on the second, I learned when to hold them and when to fold them, right? It's a hard line. 5 p.m. I'm out. See you guys in the morning. It's a wrap. The sacrifice of entrepreneurship is, no, that doesn't always fly. There are urgent, emergent. There are clients that need a little more hand-holding than others. Navigating the political shenanigans, should we say? Shenanigans of our times, because that is a part of public health now. It cannot be separated. And that is a sacrifice. I ran away essentially from dealing with politics in health systems and in healthcare, but found myself still having to navigate those waters. And so for me, that is a sacrifice because, politicians, I'm not going to say nothing else. That's the word. The politician is the word. But that is a huge sacrifice. for me, because I am so authentic, I am so upfront, I am so truthful, I often tell my clients things that they do not like. But that is how we get to where we need to be. In politics, they are very creative in their word usage. And that is a sacrifice for me, I would say.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. What else do you feel like is helpful for people to know in this conversation today?
I would say, do what you love while you can. If we have not, as a world, if we have not learned anything about this time, is that time, we don't have a lot of it. And I think everyone knows someone that has been impacted by COVID, that has passed away. And I think my work is it's so meaningful to me because essentially I'm fighting against those things, right? And it is something that I've always loved. I've always loved helping families. I've always loved kids, mamas, babies. It's all been integrated in my career. So when I say do what you love while you can, if there's nothing is forever, and that's okay. And being unsure is okay. But the fear of paralysis, and particularly for scientists, analysis paralysis, we are like, give me the chart and I will let you know. And I just encourage people, because you're on this webinar, you want to know, you're interested in consulting in whatever field. And because you are, you should do what you love.
That's beautiful. We do have one last question in the chat that is around liability issues. So have you had to deal with liability issues? And other professions have insurance or licensure to deal with, but I have not found that in public health. So how are you navigating that?
Yes, there is. Hartford, you should look them up. There is insurance.
Okay.
Because what we say, it's America, people sue for anything, but, get you a great contract writer if you don't have one already, or a good attorney that can set you up and make sure that you have that insurance. But it is there and available. I know it's Hartford. I said Hartford. That's the one I love. Okay.
Just to give them an example.
Yeah. I would say, I'm sure other places. This is not sponsored.
No.
It's not sponsored. If they would like to sponsor me, great. But there are, especially for people that do consulting, independent consulting, there are protections for you, so that you don't get sued for whatever reason. Yes. Okay. And that should be on your first checklist. If anybody's listening, that should be at the top of your.
One of those first steps.
After you get certified from the state, after you get your stuff together, after you get all your socials, hit that, get a quote for your insurance for sure.
Perfect. Okay. In the last couple of minutes, how can, if people have questions, if they want to connect, what's the best way to get with you?
I would say you are welcome to follow me on social media. All of them are at MRB Public Health. That's the best way to see what we're doing. And I would also say, if you want to connect as a client or a referral, info@mrbpublichealth.com is our email. And we can be reached there. We're pretty active on LinkedIn. The DMs are open, as the young people say. The DMs are open. So you're welcome to reach out and connect with us.
Perfect. Well, I'm so excited to share all the chat with you because you're getting so much beautiful, positive feedback. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been just a beautiful experience to be with you and to learn from you. You want to close us out with any final words?
I would say something I tell my clients, right? Give yourself some grace. Give yourself some grace, because that's how I start, right? People are dealing with a lot in life. And it's just important to me that I give grace to people so that I can get it back. And so I'm so mindful of people's attention, heart, and time. And I appreciate people's attention, heart, and time. I can't wait to see these comments there. I really can't.
They're beautiful.
Oh, that's great. We love public health, support public health. I know that seems like a plug. I'm not also sponsored by the CDC or anybody, but I would say they are doing a lot with a little. And so love on them. They're doing the best that they can. We're all doing the best that we can. So I appreciate your time and to learn more about my business.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I'll be in touch with the recording. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day. All right. Bye.
Bye.